Best of luck, Marty, as well.
Thank you.
Please move to your next session.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. So our next speaker held executive product positions at eBay, Netscape, Continuous, and HP. He's been responsible for business strategy, product management, product design, and UX for some of the world's leading internet companies. He's the author of the best-selling book, Inspired: How to Create Tech Products Customers Love, published in 2018, which I must admit I've been addicted to over the past few months, and it's really excellent. So ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to introduce Marty Cagan.
All right, thank you very much. I did want to check that you think everything is broadcasting, just because it's not actually broadcasting on the system I have set up on the side to see. But if you guys give me the green light, I'll just go anyway. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I think we're good.
You think we're good? All right then. All right then, I will. Let's do this. So thank you very much, everybody. And thank you very much, David and the crew at Agiline for inviting me. I certainly appreciate it. And looking forward to this talk. I will warn you that this is going to be a rough talk. I have a little bit of time with you, and I feel like it's more urgent than ever to be very honest with you and upfront. I'm pretty certain a lot of the things I say will not go over well, but that's all right. Hopefully, over time, you'll decide that maybe it was a good thing to talk about and to think about. I will tell you that for those that don't know, I mean, you heard a little bit about me, but I did start my career as an engineer for 10 years. And then I was lucky at Netscape, which was really the original internet company, and then ran product and design at eBay, which of course was first major marketplace. But I basically work with, I was very lucky in terms of timing because of when Netscape happened and eBay happened. I got to work with a lot of the best companies in their early years, early Amazon, early Google, Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I mean, most of the companies you'd want to work with for sure. And what drives me really is the difference between how the best companies work and how most companies work. And I will tell you that I think the difference despite my efforts, and I know that I have been trying, and I think others have been as well, the difference is getting bigger. I actually think that the average company that does tech-powered products is getting worse as compared to the best, and not better as compared to the best. And what I wanted to do in this talk was to really talk about how the best work. And if your company decides to get serious about product, either because you feel like you need to, because now Amazon is coming after you and they have skills that you realize you don't have, or because you see the prize. Look, I mean, literally the most valuable companies in the world are these very same companies I'm talking about. So it's pretty hard to argue that it's an accident that the way they work is so effective. It is absolutely the cause, in my opinion. And I want to be I'm going to be very blunt with you. If you are not working that way, and to be very, very explicit about it, if you're using processes like SAFe or less, you have no hope. I mean, you literally have no hope. I would bet money that you will fail in your objectives. So I want to be very crystal clear. Now, is it enough to use Scrum or Kanban? Of course not. Agile is a drop in the bucket of what you need to do. And I'll be very honest with you here also, whether your team uses Scrum or Kanban is not going to make the difference. It's not. We're talking noise compared to the bigger issues. And what we really need to talk about are the bigger issues. Now, to me, the biggest single reason why most companies are not working like the best companies is because they don't know what it is. They have never seen good. They've worked at a company before that, they just don't do this. They don't work this way. They don't have any leaders that work this way. And they have to hope for either their board brings in a CEO from a company that's a proven product tech company, or they bring in a product leader or a technology leader that knows what they're doing, and they sort of bring that transformation. But for most companies, they've never seen good. They've honestly never seen good. And so I want to share with you that if you decide for whatever reason you want to get serious about this, then I want to share with you what you're really getting into. Because the other thing I would say, and I've seen several companies go through this transformation, it's hard. It is hard. This is not about moving a waterfall organization to Scrum, for example. That's hard enough, actually, but changing to a tech-powered product organization in the sense we're talking about is much harder, orders of magnitude harder. So let me get into that. I want to intentionally, I'm going to save more time than usual for questions here, because I know I'm going to be throwing a lot at you that's really going to sound different than maybe you've thought about, or how your mindset. I also want to be clear here. Sometimes when I talk to a European audience, they think that what I'm really saying is that companies in Silicon Valley are awesome, but if you're over on the other side of the Atlantic, you're terrible. It's so not true. Some of the best companies in the world I know are actually are in Europe, or in one of my favorite companies is Trainline in London. Great transformation. They went from terrible to awesome, one of the best companies in the world. And I will also say that right in the heart of San Francisco, you can go across the street from a great company and you're at a terrible company using practices from decades ago. So it is not about where you are in the world. That said, a lot of what we'll be talking about today is really culture. And culture is influenced by national culture too, especially when we talk about things like process. And one of the biggest things I have to really dial up when I talk to European organizations is to convince them to dial down the process. This process it's a crutch. You're hiding behind process. So we need to really put process in perspective. Like Netflix likes to say, lead with context, not with process, not with control. I'll show you more about what I mean when we get there. But that's a difference that may may be relevant. And there are companies in the US, by the way, that are obsessed with process too. I struggle with this, especially on the east side of the US, where the government plays a big role. They unfortunately, not a good sense. All right, so let's talk about empowered product teams. And I'm gonna just cut right to the chase here. All right, let's just go right to the purpose of an empowered product team, which I hope you'll notice is very different from how most companies set up their product teams. In an empowered product team, their purpose, their reason for existing is to innovate on behalf of your customers. And now contrast that with a typical feature team, which is there to serve the business, literally serving stakeholders. In fact, they often call the stakeholders the customer, which of course is a travesty. They're not customers. They might be partners, but they're not customers. So our job in a product team is actually to serve customers. And when we say innovate, we mean create value for them, for your company, consistently. And we do that by providing products our customers love. Otherwise, they're not going to buy it, right? And this is actually, the last part is often the hardest. We have to do it in a way that meets the needs of our business. And what that means is that it's something we can afford to market, we can sell with the skills we have, with the money we have, with the time we have. It means that we support the compliance regulations. If you're in a regulated environment, you have to comply with government regulations as well. But you have to be able to pay for it. You have to be able to monetize it. So the solution, it's not enough just to design an awesome solution. It has to be an awesome solution that will work for your business. And that's what really makes product hard, these three things together. But this is the purpose of an empowered product team. Now, these teams, unlike feature teams, unlike delivery teams, they are given not features to build or projects to build on a roadmap. They are given real problems to solve. Now, they might be customer problems to solve. They might be business problems to solve. Sometimes they're both, which is fine. But either way, they are real problems to solve. They're not giving you the solution. This, in fact, is literally what it means to empower a team. It means that they get to figure out the best solution to that problem. A lot of people think it means, oh, you give backlog items to your engineers at sprint planning, and empowerment means for the engineers get to go figure out the best way to implement. Obviously, that's a part of empowerment, but that's the minor part of empowerment. We're going to talk about the importance of engineers, but an empowered team means they are in a better position to actually figure out what the right solution even is. So you don't give them features or projects, you give them problems to solve. And then if you're giving a team a problem to solve, now it's a different assignment for them. Now, because if you give them a problem to solve, basically there's a little bit of design, usually some wireframing, and then maybe a little usability testing, and then they put it on the backlog and build it. It's not very complicated, but they're just there to deliver. They're by definition, if you give them the solution, there is no product discovery. The whole point of discovery is to discover a solution to a problem. So, but now that the product team is actually given a problem to solve, they are empowered to come up with that solution, which we'll talk about next. What does that really mean? They have to discover and deliver an effective solution. We'll come back to that in a second. But another important point is, if you give them features on a roadmap, and if that feature doesn't actually solve the ultimate customer problem, you can't really blame the team. The team just built the feature they were told to build. Now, maybe the feature was poorly designed, maybe the feature was poorly implemented, but probably the feature wasn't even the right thing to build. And so the point is, you can't hold the feature team accountable. You can hold a product team accountable, and they are accountable to business results, real results. So shipping a feature is output. Solving the customer problem or your business problem is outcome. That's results. So this is the point about empowered product teams. We give them problems to solve. We empower them to come up with a solution and then deliver that solution to market, and we hold them accountable to the results. That is how empowered product teams work. And hopefully every one of you can see how dramatically different that is from how a feature team works. Now, what does it mean to come up with an effective solution? This gets to the heart of what a product team has to do. Fundamentally, a product team has two major things to do. They have to figure out a solution to the problem, and then they have to deliver a product quality solution to that problem. Both are hard. One is a set of discovery problems, which is what we're talking about here, and the other is a delivery challenge. But let's talk about discovery first. An effective solution is something that has addressed 4 critical risks of all product work. The first and usually the hardest is that the product has to be valuable. The customers have to buy it or choose to use it. If they've already subscribed to your service and it's a new capability, the question is, will they choose to use that capability? That's what it means to be valuable. Second, it has to be usable. Even if they love what the promise of the capability or feature is, but they can't figure out how to use it because it's too hard, then that's not helpful. So it needs to be usable. It needs to be feasible, which actually means quite a few things. It means that we have the skills on our team. First and foremost, we know how to build this. Algorithmically, we know what to do. We have the skills, like I said. We also have the technology in place, that we have the tech stack we need to solve that particular problem. It also means we have the time we need to solve that problem. If it's got to be done before the annual holiday quiet period, which by the way, we are in right now, then we need to know if we can get that done by the quiet period. So that's all part of feasibility. And then viability is that part about, will it work for our business? Is it something that's marketable, saleable, legal, compliant? Does it support GDPR, for example? Is it something we can pay for? Is it something we can monetize? These are all the parts we mean about a viable solution. Every product thing you work on, from a feature to the biggest redesign, they all have these 4 risks. Now, sometimes, of course, it's pretty simple that what we're working on, and you just literally, the product manager, the product designer, and the tech lead look at this and say, yeah, is anybody worried about any of these? No. Let's just put the damn thing on the backlog and build it. That's fine. Of course, the reason we worry about these risks are for the harder things, which unfortunately are usually the things that move the needle. These are the things that really matter. So an effective solution is valuable, usable, feasible, and viable. Now, from a delivery point of view, and this is where agile methods like Scrum and Kanban are valuable, they can help us address the delivery risks, which are along line. We have to make sure this thing is, we say, productized, which means it's scalable, it's performant, it's fault tolerant, it's maintainable, it's internationalized, localizable if it needs to be. This is what we mean by product quality implementation. We say our engineers need to be able to release with confidence. That's the delivery risks. But most organizations I meet, professional organizations, they understand the delivery risks. They struggle with the discovery risks. And that's what we mean here by coming up with an effective solution. All right, next, the skills you need on a team. And I'll be honest, most companies that tell me they want to move to empowered product teams, this is where they fail. Step 1, they literally do not have people with the necessary skills. Now, most of the time they do have skills in engineering and design, but they very often do not have the skills they need in product management. But sometimes all of these areas need to be major help. But what we look at a product team, and I am all about product teams. I have never seen a great product come from one person. It always comes from a product team. So it's all about those teams. Now, these are the 3 core competencies on a normal product team. We have others that support us, like data analysts, data scientists, user researchers, product marketing managers, scrum masters, or agile coaches. There's all kinds of people that are in supporting roles, but these are the 3 core competencies on a typical empowered product team. Now, it's a little misleading for a lot of people because a feature team will usually list the same roles. And what's really going on is they have a bit of design, some design, they have engineers, but they basically have a product manager that's really a project manager, not a product manager in the sense that I'm about to describe. So let's go back. On an empowered product team, you need these skills. Why? Because of those 4 risks we described: value, viability, usability, feasibility. Now, in an empowered product team, the product manager is explicitly responsible for value and viability. And by the way, if you're wondering whether or not your product manager knows what it means to be a real product manager, if you ask them to do their job and they hem and haw and give all these excuses about, like herding cats and, do whatever's necessary and all that, it's a feature team. If it's a product team, the product manager's like, yeah, I'm on the hook for value and viability. My designer is on the hook for usability, and my engineers are on the hook for feasibility and, of course, delivery. That is, so we have very specific obligations, each of us. Now, when I say accountable for value and viability, that means if that feature or product ships without, and it's not valuable, which is easy for us to tell, by the way. We have analytics for all of these, but value is the easiest one to judge because that's the one that ties directly to business results. And viability, if it launches and it's not valuable or viable, that's on the product manager. The product manager did not deliver on her responsibilities. Similarly, if a product launches and it's not usable, we have plenty of analytics, plenty of data that shows that users are completely confused. They can't figure out this workflow. That's on the designer. And finally, if you have something that your engineers said was only going to take 2 weeks of work, not through any silly games like story point estimation, but through real discovery work, and they actually say, we can deliver this in 2 weeks, and then it's 2 months later and it's still not there, then that's on the engineers. They did not, they are on the hook for feasibility. So this is what we mean by accountability. Now, they're all responsible to help each other, and this is why product teams really are great examples of true collaboration, because very often the best insights for value come from the engineers. I'll make that point in a minute. Very often the best insights around value can come from the designers. So it's not just we worry about our little responsibility here. We're accountable for these particular risks, but we are responsible to help our colleagues on all of these. So let's talk about each of these roles a little more. Obviously, we could talk for multiple hours on each of these roles, but there's a few higher order points I want to make because they are so different in a great company from most companies. And I want to emphasize it's not that the people are a different, smarter person. It's that they are able to use their skills to their potential. I'm going to talk more about that too. So let's dive in on that product manager. If you are responsible for value and viability, then you have to bring some real skills to the table. And those skills are in 4 different areas. First of all, you have got to be a real expert on your users and customers. And again, we're not talking the stakeholders there. We are talking about the real users and customers. In fact, your CEO probably needs to view you as product manager as one of the experts in the company on our customers. You need to be out interacting with those customers every single week. So it is absolutely table stakes that you have deep understanding of your users and customers. Second, you need to have good understanding of the data that's generated by your users and customers. The sales data also on for example, sales cycle, cost of sales, what people are actually buying. And of course, the data changes over time, and we're looking at data warehouse data to understand those trends. So the product manager needs to be an expert on the data about her product. The third one is that big one I was talking about before, where you have to understand each. So to just want to be very clear, I said that in an empowered product team, you are not there to serve the business. You are not there to be subservient to your stakeholders. You are there to serve your customers in ways that work for the business. The way you do that is not by ignoring your stakeholders, but by understanding each of their constraints. What are the legal constraints? What are the privacy constraints? What are the marketing constraints, the sales constraints? You have to understand those, because the solutions that your team comes up with has to work not just for users and customers, but also for your business. And this is on you as product manager. And finally, you have to understand your industry, the major trends, the technologies that you're going to make a bet on, the competitive landscape. There's major things that go on in our industry that you as product manager need that will impact your product work and your strategy. So this is what the product manager brings to the team. Now notice this is very different from what a feature team so-called product manager does, which is really cat herder project manager, shepherding it through a process. This is not about process. This is about a solution. And this is the biggest gap I see. Companies that tell me they are serious about transforming to a true product company, this is usually their biggest gap right here. Let's talk about designers. I love this Steve Jobs quote because I really want to emphasize this. Design is not just look and feel. Design is how the whole product works. When I talk product design in a real product company, this is very different often than it is in a feature team company, where a designer, if you even have a dedicated designer, is often more of a graphic designer. Just to be clear, on a product team, the product designer is skilled in service design, interaction design, at least some visual design, and trained in user research. Even when we have user researchers to help us, which we love, the designer has usually been trained in that. So they are right at the center and a true partner with the product manager and the tech lead to solve hard problems. So design in a real empowered product team is front and center. It is it's not, don't think of that old model of some product manager defining requirements and throwing it to a designer to make wireframes and comps and then throwing it on a backlog to engineers. This is not what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about a true product designer. These people are awesome. The companies I've been mentioning, but I'd add companies like Slack and Spotify and Etsy. These companies all understand these product designers are critically important. And they are just, basically the three really in-demand positions on these product teams are product managers, product designers, and engineers. All right. And then let's talk about those engineers a little more. So many people don't get this. If I had to pick one point to really get into, if you only took one thing away from this entire talk, it would be this point. If you want to really find one thing that's different between the great product companies and the rest, it's this: the role of the engineers. And I mean that very literally, the role of the engineers. You go to a company like Apple, you go to a company like Spotify, Google, any of these, the engineers are not just there to code. They are there to solve hard problems for customers. Realize the reason they are so essential is because great products, if you step back, great products are combinations of real customer issues, real customer problems, like we talked about, combined with technology that's just now possible. That just now possible comes from the engineers. They are working with the technology every single day, so it puts them in the best possible position to see what's just now possible. This is why executives can't do this. Your customers certainly can't do this. Your stakeholders can't do this, But in feature teams, the engineers are not even asked to do this. They're not even asked to suggest it. They're not even invited to the party. The biggest difference, I was talking to somebody recently about how it is that Spotify has done so well competing against two of the best companies in the world at tech product, Apple and Amazon, competing head to head with them. And I told them it's because from day one, they understood the importance of an empowered engineer. Many of the Agile coaches on the call may think it's all the pithy process stuff that they do with their unique nomenclature and stuff. And of course, despite Henrik's brilliance at communicating that is not why Spotify is awesome. Spotify is awesome because of their engineers, full stop. Now, good engineers deserve to be complemented with designers and product managers that know what they're doing. They need that. It's not enough to have strong engineers, but that is the heart. If I find a company that has truly empowered engineers, I know I can help them very quickly become awesome. If that company, though, does not, so let's say they have a process like SAFe or less, or even worse, let's say they outsource their engineers. If any of you on this call or in a company that actually outsources their core engineers, you need to start looking for another company, because there is no way in hell you're going to have any kind of success with that model. That is literally the mercenary model. So hopefully it goes without saying they need to be employees. They need to be long-term committed on your team. But you've probably heard the old saying, we need missionaries, not mercenaries. Well, outsourcing your engineers is mercenaries. So if you're running a process like SAFe, the issue isn't that they're outsourced. They usually aren't. The issue is they are just there to code. That whole model, which is, I do not know a single real product company that does use it or ever would use it. It is the antithesis of an empowered product team model. Of course, it doesn't have empowered engineers or designers or product managers either, but that's one of many, many issues. All right. And don't, by the way, it's not even Agile. Don't believe the marketing BS. SAFe is not Agile in any sense, in any meaningful sense. It is all marketing. That is a classic waterfall reincarnated. So anyway, looking at good empowered product teams, these engineers are right at the heart of how those teams work. All right, when Netflix says we lead with context, not with control, they don't like the command and control model that most companies use. They like empowering. It's all, that whole company is built around what I'm talking about. And of course, if you are going to let your product teams make real decisions, and by the way, real decision is not, do you use this algorithm or this algorithm to implement this? A real decision is, how are we really going to solve that problem for customers? That's a real decision. If you want your teams to make good decisions, you have to give them context. And that's what strategic context is. How is your business assessed? What are the major performance indicators for your company? What's your product vision? What's your product principles? What's your team topology? Team topology refers to as long as you're beyond a small early stage startup, if you've got multiple product teams, what is each team responsible for? And of course, most important of all, your product strategy. Your product strategy says, how are you going to deliver on that vision? But in particular, what specific problems do we need the product teams to solve? That's the product strategy. And then we give those teams, rather than roadmaps, we give them those problems to solve. That's what the objectives are in that graphic. The objectives, the team objectives. And the objectives are not for individuals. They're not for functional orgs like designers or engineers. They're for product teams. So this product team is told, go figure out why customers keep unsubscribing from our service and fix it. That's your assignment. There's 1,000 ways to do that, but the team is in the best position to figure that out. All right, that's what we mean by strategic context. This is another really important misunderstanding people have about empowered product teams, and honestly about Agile. They think with Agile, when they go to Agile, that they need less management, but it's the opposite. You need not more management, but you need better management. The key here to making this whole thing work is actually your leaders and managers. So this is a big topic. I do not have time. That's another talk to go into the topic of the role of true leadership in an empowered product company. But I do want to make sure you understand what's in the scope of a real leader. Number one, they are the coach. They are the one who is showing people how to get better at their job. And coaching usually takes almost half the time of a good manager. So I'm not talking a little bit of time. I'm talking about 20 hours a week of coaching. And obviously you have to take staffing seriously if you believe in empowered product teams, because it depends on competence. It depends on having a competent product manager, competent designer, and competent engineers. Product vision is hugely important. That's describing where we're going in 3 to 5 years or 5 to 10 for devices. The team topology, which is, like I said, how do we decide what teams are responsible for what parts of the experience? The product strategy, which really ties all this together and comes up with the objectives for the team. And then there is ongoing evangelism, ongoing sharing of this context so that teams can make good decisions, because you really are pushing the decisions down to the product teams. All right, so let me just, I'm throwing a lot at you, I realize that, but I'm hoping it proves useful. I want to kind of shake you out of this thought that, because my view on what most teams are doing, and when I look at the typical topics, that in most Agile related conferences, honestly, it's just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, making no real difference at all. So I'm trying to get you to take a hard look at what is really necessary in order to make a difference, because I think it's much bigger and harder things. So let's talk about what it means to be an empowered product team. These are the 3 sort of litmus tests for that. Number 1 is a cross-functional team, product design, engineering, staffed with competent people. Really, the emphasis is on competence here, covering the necessary range of skills. I hear a lot of people tell me they have cross-functional teams, and to them that means they have a front-end and a back-end engineer. That is not a cross-functional team, just to be very clear. Empowered. This is an easy one for you to tell. Are you giving the team problems to solve, customer problems or business problems, or are you giving them roadmaps of features and projects to build? Is the team able to decide the best way to solve those problems? And finally, is the team accountable? Is the team accountable for solving the customer or business problems, the actual outcomes? If those 3 things are true, I would argue you've got an empowered product team. In order for these to be true, you're almost certainly working in a true tech-powered product organization. But if not, I would argue you've got some real work to do. I do want to tie, I threw a lot of major concepts at you, and I want to tie these together just so it's not rocket science how they fit together, but it is important. And it is also true that a lot of people, there's a lot of noise out there around product, especially product management and product design, a lot of noise. And so you have to decide, you have to decide if I know what I'm talking about. You have to decide if anybody you're listening to knows what they're talking about. But these are the higher order concepts, I would argue. You need that product vision to describe the future you're trying to create. Remember, if you've got 25 product teams, this is the common North Star. Product vision is one of the most important things you can do. That's a major topic in its own right. Product strategy helps us. How are we going to solve that? How are we going to make that vision a reality? And that tells us the specific problems we need to solve in order to make that vision a reality. Team objectives are how we assign those problems to the actual product teams. Product discovery is how a team comes up with a solution to the problem that they've just been given. Product delivery is how that team delivers that, takes it to market. So for those that are just know Scrum and Kanban, that's a delivery part. And when I said moving to, Scrum is not going to make the difference, this is what I mean. That's just one part. And frankly, it's the easy end of the process. All right. Okay, I tried to time that for 40 minutes, and I think I came pretty close there. I wanted to leave some time for questions. I will mention that in a few weeks, I finally have the second book coming out, Empowered. Inspired, for those that know, maybe heard of it. It's aimed at product teams, and in particular, product managers, how they work to solve hard problems. In the model I described. But what I learned with Inspired was there are a lot of companies in the world where their leaders do not let them work that way. And so I realized there was a real need to share the practices, not just of great product teams, but of great product leaders. And so while Inspired shares the lessons from product teams, Empowered shares the lessons of product leaders, real product leaders, the kind I'm talking about at these good companies, not the other kind. Okay, so that'll be out in a few weeks if you're interested. There are also a very big backlog of articles or a list of articles on the website, and everybody who, you've got my email right there. But David, do we have time for some questions then still?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have about 20 minutes for questions, Marty. So I know when we were talking beforehand, we were planning this, and we wanted loads of discussion and lots of questions. And I see loads of discussion happening in our discussion panel, and loads of questions as well. So we'll time box the questions to 20 minutes if that's okay. And yeah, so let's get started. So question from Emma. So there's a lot of fear in companies with leadership with relation to product discovery. So yeah, this is definitely a common one. I often find that companies do not see the value and do not understand what we are losing by not learning. Do you have any advice on how product managers can help change that mindset?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's really important. If the company is a feature team company, then there's no point in even trying to say we want to do product discovery. And I don't know Emma's company, but it's very likely, especially with that question, that it's a feature team company, that her team is given a roadmap of features. So if the company's given you a roadmap of features saying, we need you to build this, and then the team says, but wait, we should figure out if that's the right thing to build, and we should figure out if customers want this, and they're like, no, just build the thing. And a lot of them will say, and if you don't want to build it, we can just hire Accenture. They'll build anything we tell them to. So this is the bigger issue, is the company understanding that the way they're working is the root cause of their wasted product efforts. Now, it's no secret the percentage of work that actually meets the outcomes they hope in the conventional way, it's terrible. It's just that, like I said, most companies don't know that. So what I would say to Emma is that question is signaling that the leaders have much bigger misunderstandings of really the point of the product teams, what they're there for. If they really are there to solve hard problems for customers, and that's where discovery comes in.
Okay, thanks for the question, Emma. Kunal, so I see lots of upvotes on this question as well. So I guess this transformation has to be top down to be effective. What role can the team play to help management?
Yeah, so there is actually one case where I've seen where it wasn't top down, where the transformation happened more bottom up, but it was a very unusual company. You all know it in the UK, the BBC, because the BBC has a government appointee at the top. So it's a very different kind of organization. But in every other case I know, the successful transformations did happen only when the CEO led it. And by the way, when the CEO says, oh no, I've hired a chief digital officer, that's a big flag. That is because here's why. To work the way I just talked about, it impacts a lot more than product managers, designers, and engineers. It impacts HR. It impacts finance. It impacts sales and marketing. It impacts the whole company. service. So you can't, that's why the CEO really has to be, they don't have to be the person, driving everything, but boy, they have to be on board and they have to be willing to provide the air cover. It starts with that. And I know, Silicon Valley Product Group is only 6 people. We're very small, but we don't even bother with companies unless it's the CEO that's really driving it, because we know from experience that that's what it takes.
Okay.
But I should say the question was also, what can we do as a team? And there is an answer to that, I think, that is good. And before you decide to leave a company, I would suggest that at least you try this. Go to the leadership and say, hey, we've learned that companies like Netflix, companies like Google, Amazon, they work really different than us. And maybe we should at least try working that way. So what if we did a test? What if you let our product team work this way for a quarter or 2 as an experiment? That is often, in fact, I rarely see a company not embrace that experiment. It's very low risk, it's very low cost, and they can sort of see what might happen. The other thing is, obviously I wrote a book. I just finished reading. There's a brand new book that came from Reed Hastings, as you know, the founder and CEO of Netflix, that is describing how they work, basically, which, by the way, is very much what I just described. And it's not an accident. They are one of the companies that have had a huge influence on me. I think they do product incredibly well. The book is called No Rules Rules. And it's all about get rid of your bureaucracy, get rid of your command and control style, and empower your teams. Hopefully that sounds familiar. Now, they take a pretty hard line approach to that, harder line than I advocate even. They're pretty rough there. You're either 100% on board this model or they will buy you out. So they are tough, but that's the kind of thing you might share that book with your CEO. It's a really good book, by the way. Now, it might scare off your CEO. That's my fear of it, because it really is not as hard as he makes it to sound in that book. But it's a really good book. And that is really what we're talking about.
Oh, okay. So we'll share a link to that book as well for anyone who's interested. I like how you described, Marty, the, I suppose, piloting, experimenting with that approach. We talked a bit about experimentation today. So, okay, cool. So thanks, Kunal. A question from John. So this is around org design. So I'm curious if you have hierarchical organization design in your product group, or if it's more of a case of clear accountabilities across a flat organization. Maybe it's another way. I guess I'm asking you, how can you create an environment where engineers are empowered?
Well, that's the key, that the environment as engineers are empowered. The org chart, I'll say a couple things about the org chart, but the most important thing is it really doesn't matter that much. If you've got the right people in your company, it really doesn't matter that much. I can work with a company through a whole transformation. We don't even have to touch the org. The issue is really the leaders and whether or not they know how to do their job the way we're talking about. So, because basically a product team is a cross-functional, it's a flat team, it's a flat structure. So it really doesn't matter. Now, it is true that 98% of companies have the same thing. They basically have a head of product, chief product officer, and all the product people report to her. They have a head of design, all the designers report to her, and then they have a head of technology, and all the engineers report to her. And that's for a simple reason. It's because most people want to work for somebody that can help them get better at their job. And coaching is exceptionally important. So it's a lot more likely that if you're a designer, you are going to get useful coaching on how to become a great designer from a manager that's a great designer, rather than from, say, an engineer or a product manager. That's why functional org charts are used in the vast majority of companies, but it's not critical.
Okay, thanks for the question, John. Francesco is asking, how is the role of product manager that you described different from what a product owner does in Scrum? And here I'm remembering your initial statement about Scrum being positive, but just noise compared to the rest of the challenges.
Okay, well, it's a good, very fair question. So just to be clear, product owner, and hopefully everybody on this call knows this, but product owner is a role on an agile team. Product manager is a title of a person. The product manager needs to be the product owner, but they need to be the product owner. Now, in some processes, you probably know they're not. SAFe is a good example. SAFe separates those. There's some product manager in an ivory tower somewhere way upstream, and a lowly product manager is just there as a backlog administrator, working with the engineers. This is why this is the opposite of an empowered product team, and certainly the opposite of empowered engineers. So the answer is the product manager should be the product owner. And that's only about 10% of their job. It's not a big part of their job. It's not the fun part of their job. Obviously, most of that time is in Jira every day. So it's not like the fun part, but it is in order to make good decisions about what should actually go in Jira. That's the 90%. That's what a product manager does. So whenever anybody tells me I'm a product owner, I'm like, really? You're just a product owner? Just a backlog administrator? You're probably not paid very much. That's a terrible menial job. I don't envy that at all. However, if you're really a product manager, that means that includes the product owner responsibilities. That is normal. So I hope if you are a product manager, step up and learn how to be a real product manager.
Okay. Thanks, Francesco, for that question. So Sharon has a question around SAFe. I know you touched on frameworks, Marty. So if you're starting from a SAFe environment, where do you start to incrementally move to best practice or better practice, moving from feature teams to empowered teams?
Well, my sarcastic answer would be you start with LinkedIn. Okay. But because really that tells me you're in a company that really doesn't know they even need you as a product manager or as a designer or really as a professional engineer. So what's really going on there is they probably have a CIO rather than a CTO that has no idea about product company and is leading their company down a terrible path. And so this is one of the rare cases I usually recommend people work on their resume, find a company that really has a chance to let you do real product and take care of their customers.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Okay, so Marcus has a question. This is around dependencies. So how do you propose to set up empowered product teams within a bigger ecosystem with lots of dependencies? So for example, a hardware product having limited freedom for software products.
Well, okay. So first of all, those companies I've been talking about, nobody would call them small. Nobody would. If you look at Netflix, if you look at Amazon, look at whether it's Alexa, whether it's Kindle, whether it's AWS, these are major efforts. These have many dependencies. This is really the team topology question. And so the question is, how do you give teams as much well, you can give empowerment is actually not this dimension. This is really speaking to autonomy. Autonomy is where dependencies become dependencies get in the way of autonomy. Autonomy is how much control do you have over everything you need to change. In most organizations, nobody has complete autonomy. Nobody can change everything. They all have dependencies. And in fact, in the best organizations, rather than fight that, they sort of optimize their organization for that. In fact, most of the best companies today have on the order of 50% of their product teams and their engineers on platform teams that are there to empower, that's not the right word there really, but they are there to enable the experienced teams. So they are empowered also, that's of course, but they are there to enable them because that's their highest leverage. And obviously, if you have a platform team, that is by definition a dependency. So dependencies are not, you shouldn't, we want to minimize dependencies. We want to be smart about dependencies, but anywhere from medium size to large size, it's hopeless to try, in my experience, hopeless to try to eliminate dependencies. So we maximize for autonomy. We don't go for exclusive 100%.
Okay, thanks, Marcus, for that question. And Patty has a question. So do you see a dilemma for product managers who define value in terms of what the customer wants, while empowered engineers will occasionally, even frequently, want to do work that does not obviously neatly tick that customer value box?
Yeah, but that is a common consequence of the product manager not doing her job with the engineers. So it is a big part of that product manager's job to share the context I was describing with the engineers. If you don't in fact, I tell teams the magic happens when your engineers go with you to customers. That's when the magic happens. If you do not include your engineers, if they do not see the customer pain firsthand, then they have a lot of creative energies, which they will probably apply to different areas. That's why the most classic thing for engineers that are frustrated to do is go work on tools, because they know the customers for the tools, it's other developers, and they want to make them more efficient. So this is a sign that the product manager is not including the engineers to see. And really nothing gets an engineer more motivated than seeing a customer in pain. It is very motivating. And the irony is so many product managers think it's their job to shelter the engineers from this. And by the way, this is very easy. This is a pattern. A real empowered team product manager, they understand this. Engineers are right there. If it's a feature team, they view, well, it's any hour spent with a customer is an hour not coding. So we don't want to do that. Huge mistake.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. Put engineers in a user testing lab or in a coffee shop doing guerrilla testing or things like that. And, it makes it very real, doesn't it? Question from Gabriel, and this is something, Marty, I'm very curious about as well. This is around OKRs. So how can OKRs play a role in empowered teams? Any tips?
Yeah, OKRs are, well, so I did not use that term because that is a specific technique, but the term I used in my talk was team objectives. And that, OKRs have, at this point, a terrible reputation. And it's because they've been so many feature team companies have tried to use OKRs, which is so ridiculous because OKRs came out of the kind of companies I'm talking about. It literally came out of Intel, which was a poster child for what I'm talking about. It's where Andy Grove, this is, the whole story, John Doerr came out of Intel. This was an empowered team company. OKRs were created as a mechanism to empower teams. I mean, OKRs are not complicated. The objective is supposed to be the problem to solve. The key results are the business results that measure success. That is literally how you give a team their work. So the problem is if you have feature teams and you give a team a roadmap and an OKR, then they're going to ignore the OKR. That's called OKR theater. So that's what's going on. And it's worth pointing out, the OKR technique is not what's important. It's a super easy technique. What's important is that you've set up around empowered product teams.
I like the OKR theater analogy, Marty. I think I remember John Cutler gave a talk last year and he called zombie OKRs as well. These OKRs that are almost like don't do the job they're supposed to do. So we're nearly at time. I'm just going to take one more question, if that's okay, Marty.
Sure.
We'll finish up then. So a question from Sarah. So sometimes the creation and creators of product strategy are far removed from the product teams. Should engineering teams have a seat at the table when creating the strategy to understand the problems they will solve? And how do they align back to the strategy? How they align back?
Well, the one thing I wanted to, because the term in the question, she used the term engineering teams, right? I don't even know what that is. Product team has engineers. There is an engineering organization, but assuming we have an empowered product team, I think the question is, Does that empowered product team that has engineers, are they contributing to the product strategy? And yes, in a healthy organization, now they're not responsible for it. The responsible party are your product leaders. That's the leaders of product management, product design, and engineering. But the product teams every week are testing new ideas and learning things. And occasionally, they will learn something really important. And we refer to those as insights versus just learning. And those insights that's what powers our product strategy. So of course, if you have good leaders, they are dying to hear about these insights that come up. But imagine a healthy product organization. You've got 25 product teams doing interaction with customers every single week. And so they are, every once in a while, they get an insight. The company really celebrates that big insight. And they say, in the next quarter, we're going to double down on that learning because we think we can turn that into a great product offering. So yes, in a healthy organization, that it's two-way.
Okay. Thanks, Marty. So guys, we're nearly out of time. Marty, I just want to share one comment on the discussion forum as well. Emma has said we need Ali to arrange another conference for company execs and just bring Marty in for the day. So I think we wanted to spark a bit of a discussion with Marty's talk and lots of questions. We could spend another hour on the questions as well. Just if people do have questions, follow up for you, Marty, that we didn't get to today, where can they best reach you?
Well, my email right there, kagan@svpg.com. So hopefully you can see that on there. And I know I was kind of rough there on some people maybe wondering where they could work. But the good news is there are good product companies all over the world today. And I hope we'll see more of them.
Excellent. Okay. So thanks again so much for your time, Marty. Great talk. And we hope to see you for your first visit to Ireland at some stage in the future as well.
So I hope so. Look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Cool. See ya.